We must rely on science in making our arguments. Sex is determined by chromosomes. Every individual, based on the identity, based on the genetics they receive from the mother, from the father, every aspect of our genetic code indicates male or female. You do not make the argument for sex based on reproduction alone. There are some men and women who cannot reproduce because of physical deformities. That does not make them any less male or female, because it is defined by the chromosomes, not by the external characteristics, not by facial hair. It's defined by the chromosomes. This is a fundamental and essential argument. You've got to stand for truth. And what we find from the gender ideologists, from the LGBT activists, is that they want to push aside any reference or recognition of truth and induce into children assessing themselves and their identities based on their feelings. And especially when it comes to teenagers, when it comes to that period of adolescence, which is a very difficult, it's a challenging time for each individual. There are concerns with one's physical aspect. There are psychological changes that occur. And it is very easy for these very demented and perverted activists to induce children to think, well, maybe you're not really a boy. Maybe you're not really a girl. Maybe you're not supposed to like other people of the opposite sex. You're supposed to hook up with the same sex or have relationships with the same sex. And this is an example here. This gender unicorn is a telling example of the kind of perversion, the kind of rot that is being pushed on children in schools throughout the country. Things are changing for the better. Florida passed a parents' rights bill, a parents' rights legislation, which puts an end to this kind of promotion in the younger grades, which is kindergarten to third grade. That would be from 5 years old to 9 years old. So there are successes. We're starting to push back on this. And again, when it comes to this transgender ideology, it is essential to communicate it's a falsehood. A man cannot become a woman. A woman cannot become a man. And these behaviors are inherently, these procedures to attempt to change one's sex are destructive. They are harmful. They create a lifetime of pain. You see the points that I'm making here. I'm not talking about how God made man and woman. I'm not talking about how for thousands of years it's always been male or female. I make arguments based on science. I make arguments based on research. I make arguments based on the plenary physical evidence. I apologize for the gruesome nature of this picture, but it is essential that the general public understand how destructive, how horrific, how insane these procedures are. This is the kind of damage that is done to a woman who wants to pretend to be a man, who wishes to have the genitalia of a man. And I will not overwhelm the audience with other perverted or destructive pictures. But I can't stress enough how important it is to begin communicating to a general public how harmful these procedures are. And can you imagine doing this to a child? Can you imagine doing this to children? This alone is enough to dissuade many against this horrific procedures. This is what happens to young girls, especially. It has become another pandemic of sorts in the United States. Girls, generally, this happens for girls during their puberty or adolescence period. They're uncomfortable with their bodies. They don't like the changes that occur, and they think that they should become males. This is becoming a social contagion on social media. So I can't stress enough, even to you who are parents in the audience, be very careful with the social media that your children are interacting with. It can cause a lot of problems. Here you see an example of a top surgery where a young girl's breasts are removed. This is a ghastly procedure. This is something that no child should go through. No adult should permit to happen to a child. And so one of the basic arguments that I urge every pro-family activist to make, there's even an element of mockery that we should bring in our opposition to this agenda. As I've asserted time and again, LGBT perversion, it's based on false science and lies. People think that there's more than two sexes. You have to wonder, do they believe that the world is flat too? Are they that blind? Are they foolish enough to believe that the sun revolves around the earth? We have to reduce these arguments, this mindset, to the absolute folly that it truly is. These people are out of their minds. They are not in reality, who support these false notions that a man can become a woman, or that two men can marry and it's the same thing as a man and a woman. I'm happy to report, even in my country, that young people are waking up and they see that this agenda is destructive. This was the testimony of one young man I knew a couple of years ago, and he began to realize that we pro-family activists who have sounded the alarm against the normalization of homosexuality and transgenderism, we were right. And we knew it was not going to stay in the bedroom. It has gone from the bedroom to the corporate boardroom, and now it has invaded the classroom. And as I had spoken with Pastor Goron a few months ago, there is this determined effort to push this ideology into the classroom to teach children these lies. Gender ideology is not bad. We are merely trying to teach kids to respect women and girls. This is a common talking point. I had mentioned it briefly before. We're teaching sex ed so that men learn boundaries and don't hurt women. That's the common talking point. But here is the truth. Gender ideology is erasing women. You see on the top right side, you have a man pretending to be a woman competing in the women's NCAA swim competition. It is eliminating women's sports. We see the harms against women and men. And I provided just one page. You see in the bottom right-hand corner, this is a page from a comic book or graphic novel, which shows individuals engaging in oral sex. These are pictures presented to children. That's what gender ideology is really all about. It is about normalizing the sexual perversion and pushing it onto children. It is about grooming and inducing children to think that they are in the wrong body or that they should be attracted to the same sex, to induce them to engage in these perverse sexual behaviors. And here's more. I almost feel like I can't comment on this. It's so offensive. But here you see on the left side and at the bottom, these are scenes from a homosexual pride parade in the United States in the area. Bottom page, you have adults kissing a child. And then you see in the top left, the gentleman wearing black clothes. This is part of something called the bondage, dominance, sadomasochism movement. The homosexual agenda wants to normalize sexual encounters that involve violence, abuse. They want to make this acceptable. And then you have pamphlets like the one on the top right corner, which teach children how to engage in all sorts of sexual acts: anal sex, oral sex, digital sex, hand sex, digital blowjobs, hand jobs, pardon me. Those are the colloquial American expressions used to describe these destructive behaviors. This is the final point, folks. Coming after the children, I can't stress that enough. They are coming for the kids. And we see it here on full display. No shame. But then we get another pushback. LGBT activists will say, love is love. Why do you want to be against that? What's wrong? A man and a woman, or a man and a man. And of course, it's turning into a man and an adult, as I showed you in the previous slide. Love is love, right? Wrong. But the easiest way to respond to that is very basic. Well, water is water. Why don't you drink water from a toilet? Water is water. Why not drink from a sewer? No, love is not love. There's a different context. There's a different expectation. A mother's love for her child is not the same thing as a man's love for his wife or a man's love for his country. It is not the same. And here's yet another. And I'm sure you're beginning to hear these arguments in Eastern Europe. If we do not affirm trans youth, they will commit suicide. They use this emotional extortion to guilt trip parents. You need to allow your child to transition, or your child will kill himself, will kill herself. But here's the truth. Research upon research has confirmed children grow out of their gender dysphoria. 4 out of 5 grow out of it. This is in Finland, a very liberal country. And there's other studies which have shown 95% will break free of any dysphoria, any identity, sex, or gender dysphoria if they just proceed through natural puberty, which is what we all did. These problems will disappear when people just naturally develop and mature. And we have a study that you can start sharing as well. There is no evidence that gender-affirming surgeries improve mental health. None. And our book, Health Hazards of Homosexuality, contains multiple studies affirming this reality. Here's the last one, or here's another rather. LGBT people are victims. They just want to live their lives and be left alone. Why are you victimizing LGBT people? Why are you criminalizing their right to exist? The guilt trip, the lies, it's an identity that people are born into. They continue to try to bully and shame you if you don't accept and celebrate their perversion. But the truth of the matter is, it is we who are being bullied. It is we who are being persecuted. In the United States, I give you 2 examples. We have Miss Kim Davis. She was the county clerk in Kentucky. And homosexual couples came to her and said, we want to have a marriage license. And she said, I refuse to do that. And she was arrested. And the gentleman, Jack Phillips, he is a cake maker. He has been sued multiple times because he refuses to bake a cake for a gay wedding. This agenda targets us. This agenda hurts us. We are the victims. And we have a right to say that we should not celebrate destructive behaviors. And we see the activists grooming children in our schools. They target children. They lie to children. They induce them to enter into these lies, to harm their minds and their bodies. Don't allow them to bully you with the victim card. It is the everyday community, child, adult, parent, that is the victim now. And this gentleman, he's a father in Canada. His daughter was transitioned in the school where she was attending. She was told that she should be a boy. She was given hormones. She was put on a fast track for surgeries. The father didn't know about it until he started finding out that his daughter was being called a male name and that the stuff was going on. When he objected to it, the court ruled in favor of the LGBT activists and for the daughter to continue to engage in these abusive practices. And he is looking at a 6-month jail sentence simply for telling the truth about what the school district did to his daughter. This is coming to your country if you don't say no to this agenda.